Hi, mystery writers. Oh, I'm having more technical glitches. Anyway, welcome to the Mystery Writers Studio. I'm Zara Altair, and today I wanted to talk about introducing your mystery to your readers. You want to get them involved right from the get-go. The first few pages of your story tell the reader whether they want to read more. It's that simple. Are they going to keep going or are they going to stop? And, in the old days, this would happen in the bookstore. They'd look at the first few pages and either get the book or put it back on the shelf. And now, with features like Amazon's Look Inside, readers can also read the first few pages of your book and decide whether they want to continue or not. Your reader doesn't get ready for you to begin to commence your story. Your opening pages are the appetizer for the main meal of your story. So you want to get to it. So the first 10 pages or the first chapter set your reader's expectations for the rest of the book. And this is where you introduce yourself as a writer, you introduce your character, you introduce your story. All right. If you want them to continue through the next 300 pages, you have to give them a good reason to keep reading. You want to tempt them with the anticipation of a good read. And right at the beginning is the time to introduce your story and the story elements. And how you tell the story creates your reader's desire to continue. So let's talk a little bit about that. You're going to show how you tell the story because your voice and your tone and even the character point of view are things where readers have personal preferences and they may or may not want to read your story. And that's it. That's just up to the readers. But you have to give them a clear idea of what that is. So deciding how to start your mystery influences everything that comes later on in your story. So you need to introduce your detective soon, and you still need to make a story, right? So you can set your story in motion. So right away, your reader will know the point of view. Is it third person? Is it first person? And they get a sense of the narrator's voice and the tone and how the story is told. And you're setting this up for the rest of the story. So I know some beginning writers do all kinds of fancy tricks at the beginning because they want to get people involved. That's not the way to do it. You want to set your reader expectations for this is how I, the author, tell the story in this story. All right. You want to set the tone. Is it dark? Is it dramatic? Is it thoughtful? Is it touched with humor? And you have to know enough about the rest of the story to set your tone at the beginning. Because if you change your tone later, your reader will feel cheated at the beginning. They feel like you tricked them into getting started with the story, and now all of a sudden it isn't what they experienced at the beginning. It's like a bait and switch sale. So you just want to make sure that you are setting the tone for your story. And of course, you want to be true to your genre. If your story is a mystery, then you're going to hint at how you're setting up the puzzle. You introduce your protagonist right away. Introduce your protagonist. Give them a name and introduce them in action. And I suggest that you show skills your sleuth is going to use later on to actually solve the mystery puzzle. This isn't the inciting incident like a discovered body, but you want to give your reader a sense of how your protagonist will meet the significant challenges later on. And you want your reader to care enough about your protagonist to be their eyes and ears through the story. In other words, they want to follow this character. They like this character that you've presented. They're smart, or they're action oriented, or they have a sense of humor, or they have an ironic wit, whatever it is that you give your character. Is something that connects your reader with your character, and you're developing empathy, and that's how you develop that reader connection. You have the rest of your novel to expand on the setting and introduce all the other characters and plunge your detective into the mystery puzzle of the story. But for now, you want to build empathy between your reader and the detective. So, how do you do that? The best way to build empathy is to show your sleuth in action responding to a challenge. The challenge doesn't need to be big, but you must show your reader how your sleuth responds to a challenge, even a small one. This is giving them hints about their character traits and the character traits that are going to show up and either help or hinder that protagonist later in this story. So I also suggest that you introduce at least one character opinion, because your sleuth will have opinions about the people and the world around them. And a stated opinion creates an immediate emotional connection for your reader. They don't have to agree with your character's opinion. It's just like it's this connection. Oh, this person really doesn't like high rises, whatever it is, you know. Your reader may have no opinion whatsoever about high rises, but the fact that your character does gives them another hook, another emotional hook. Um, because the reader's view into your character's psyche comes from your character's opinions. Um, and I know one of my favorite characters who does this, who's got opinions all over the place, is Bernie Gunther in Philip Kerr's detective stories, starting with March Violet and every subsequent novel. Right away, usually on the very first page, you get an idea of this character's opinion about something that's going on. Usually the Nazi Party, but in that case, in the case of that story, but he has strong opinions. And right away, you know that these strong opinions are probably going to get him into trouble in in a Germany that is ruled by the Nazi Party. Anyway, that's just an example. So, also, speaking of that, you want to ground your reader in the place of time and give them some details about your character's surroundings. Is it urban or rural? Is it coastland or inland? Is it small town or a city? It doesn't matter what the setting is, you just want to hint at it for your readers so they kind of feel like they know where they are. It's showing your readers where they are and how your protagonist responds to his or her surroundings. Um, is it the present day? Is it Victorian London? Is it 14th century France? The time of your story reflects the cultures and mores that may or may not be familiar to your reader. So, right away, you want to help them understand that story world. This is where this story is happening, right? And you get your reader involved in that story. It's just like more than just a mystery puzzle. This is where it's going to be happening. And also, you want to introduce your reader to your prose style. I talked a little bit about this at the beginning. Do you write short, snappy sentences, or do you play with words and syntax? It really doesn't matter. It's your style, right? So, whatever your prose style, you want to remain consistent throughout the story. And once again, just a warning, Don't do it one way at the beginning and then have the rest of the story told in a different way, because once again your reader's going to feel tricked, and they probably may not finish this story and certainly won't read any subsequent stories that you write. How you write your story is the story's voice. So if you write in the first person point of view, your narrator will guide the prose style. So now you're writing in their voice, and you have control over the third person point of view through your vocabulary and syntax. So once again, your prose style needs to remain consistent. Start off at the beginning because you're reassuring your reader that this is how the story is going to be told. Readers have preferences, so if they like what happens and the way you tell the story at the beginning, they're going to want to continue reading, all right? So, one more thing about all of this, and that is action. You want some kind of action right away. Action needs to be meaningful for the character and the story. Action just to have action isn't meaningful. So, for instance, if you start with a fight, it really isn't that meaningful for your reader because they haven't had an opportunity to know who the characters are or to care about your character and whether they win or lose a fight. So, kind of put that in the background. Um, um, it's like a tease for your reader. You just don't want to do that. But you can use smaller actions that reveal your hero's character in a meaningful way, in a more meaningful way than, say, a big fight scene. You build your story content with small actions showing your character interacting with their world. And that's what you want to do. You want to, right at the beginning, you're revealing your character. You're showing your reader who this character is and how they interact with the world around them, how they interact with the people they meet. And it may be their neighbor. It could be anything. But you just want to show your character in action, and you use those small actions showing to illustrate how your character operates and who they are. They may have that quirky, ironic saying as they interact with somebody, and right away your reader knows, whoops, this character likes to just, get ironic, and they're going to want to see that happen later on in the story. You're going to build more meaning later, action by action. So, in the beginning, think of your hero with a challenge, however small, that reveals their character traits and sets up for future conflicts with those character traits. S.A. Cosby masters this technique for each character. He's a master writer, but he does it for each character in Blacktop Wasteland. So, so we have all these characters dealing with these minor conflicts at the beginning, and then the way they respond to things shows up later and is magnified in its importance and significance. Movement. I want to talk a little bit about movement. The story doesn't start later after the first few pages. It starts now. All right? And when you plunge your hero into action, however small, you move the story to the consequences of the action. So right away, you have your character doing something and you have the consequences of the actions that they took. And immediately your reader wants to know what will happen next. And the reader needs to ask those questions, those important what will happen next questions, right from the very beginning. So how your hero responds to the action and what decisions they make afterwards leads the reader to ask more questions. That's what you want to have happening. You're hinting at the story to come So you're giving your reader a reason to keep going because they like this character, they like the setting, they like the time. Um, okay, I was about to get on a soapbox, but I'm gonna skip that. And it's like it's really important to do this stuff, folks. It's just you really want to plunge your reader into the story. Don't have a lot of introductory stuff. We don't care how many buttons are on your hero's coat. We want to see your hero in action. If he loses a button in the action, you can talk about that later. But right now, your reader wants to see your hero in action, get a sense of how they operate, get a sense of how they respond to other people, get a sense of their opinions, and show them in the character's surroundings. Eh, because the old adage is more true for a story beginning. You have one chance to make a first impression. And that's what you're doing at the beginning of your story. You're making that first impression. And the reader says, "Oh, I like this, and I like this, and I like this, and oh, this character's making me smile." And they're going to keep reading. All right. So define the course of the story in the opening sequences, and the beginning is your first impression. The beginning starts the reader on a path to that final conclusion when they discover the truth and reveal the villain, and you want to plant those first seeds so they grow as your story progresses. Okay, I hope that helps. And I just wanted to remind you that if you are working on a mystery and you're having any trouble, I do coaching. I have a 12 session writing, mystery writing coaching, but I also do consultations. So if there's one part of your story that feels like it isn't working and you just like some input about how maybe you can fix that, I can do that too. All right. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next week.